Now, let's say person A, B, and C are identical twins with the same metabolism and same training habits. Who do you think will see the most fat loss after a few months of dieting?
So the problem is there's no person D, and I'm going to present to you person D. Coach Greg, and today we're reviewing Jeff Nippard's new video called How to Use Cheat Days and Diet Breaks for Fat Loss, Science Explained. I'm going to dig into some of the studies he posted and explain how Jeff is biased towards having the diet breaks. And I'm going to show that they didn't actually use the actual diet that's best within those studies. And no, it's not just get my freaking cookbook. I'm going to explain exactly what it is. And by the end of the video, it'll make sense. You're going to be like, yep, that's the way to diet, clearly.
You also post your cheat meals.
Yes, it's very important, the cheat meals.
Is this true?
No, it's not true at all. The only reason a cheat meal is important is because you were over-restrictive on your diet. So, is a cheat meal important? Yes, if you're undereating. If your coach is starving you. So think of it like this. If your coach is giving you refeed meals, it's because you're undereating. If the coach had you on the exact amount of calories that you actually need while dieting, you wouldn't need the refeed. You consistently feel good the entire time. You wouldn't be craving junk and cheats because you're allowed to have them anyway. Did you know that? It's not even a cheat, it's a treat. Every day you should be able to eat foods that you like. Shouldn't have to be so restrictive that you have no energy and feel like garbage on a diet and want to give up. The actual diet you should follow is a diet you can follow for the rest of your life. Shouldn't even feel like a diet. Problem with most people's diets is they're over-restrictive. They're cutting calories too far.
Now, let's say person A, B, and C are identical twins with the same metabolism and same training habits. Who do you think will see the most fat loss after a few months of dieting?
So the problem is there's no person D. And I'm going to present to you person D. Some days they might eat 2,000, some days they might eat 2,300. Just depends. Some days you're hungry and others, those days you eat more. Some days you're less hungry, you eat less. You eat enough to have energy and feel good. But averages out 2,167. Why that number? Because I added up the calories, and throughout the week it averages out that on all of these diets, they're eating approximately 2,167 calories. So rather than eating 2,000, which is too low, and having refeed days, or having 1,800 calories and eating 27, or having diet breaks, why not continuously diet on a higher calorie level? The closer you eat to maintenance, the more muscle you're going to be able to maintain on a diet, and in fact, build muscle on a diet.
The group doing diet breaks ended up losing 50% more fat, and their resting energy expenditure or metabolism was preserved twice as well.
But the problem in the Metador study is that there was a greater dropout rate. It's not actually statistically significant when you look at all the people. You can't do a randomized trial and then not look at all the data. You can't just say, oh, they gave up, not a big deal. Just ignore them. Why did they give up? What were the results? If you don't compare what's happening to the people who dropped out, how do you know what a diet's actually going to do in the real world? 50% greater dropout rate. Does that sound like the diet you want to do when there's a 50% greater chance you'll drop out? I want the diet that people will stick to, that I can stick to, that's the most likely to lead to success. The science is quite clear. The greater the deficit, the more fat you're going to lose, but also more muscle. The closer you eat to maintenance, the easier it is to put on muscle, but you're going to lose fat at a slower rate. Problem is, people are trying to lose weight too quickly. They want to have the fastest results. They want to get shredded by summer, and summer's 4 weeks away. They're crash dieting.
Even though both groups lost the same amount of weight, the group that dieted more slowly lost more fat and retained more muscle.
Yes, in that study, they say it's better to lose 0.5 kilograms rather than 1 kilogram a week. Well, of course it is. The greater the deficit, the more muscle you're going to lose. So it stands to reason that a smaller deficit is a better way to diet. So having a diet break is extending how long it takes you to lose the weight. So why don't we just do it right in the first place and have a smaller deficit? Why diet hard for 2 weeks and then eat at maintenance for 2 weeks and then crash diet again for 2 weeks and then eat at maintenance? Why not just diet slowly in the first place?
We seem to need upwards of 10 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram of body weight for full glycogen replenishment when in a depleted state.
Why are we completely depleted of glycogen in the first place? We dieting on keto? We doing a keto diet where we have no glycogen stores and then we need 2 days to replenish glycogen stores at 10 grams per kilogram of body weight? Why not diet in a smaller deficit so that there's glycogen in the muscle at all times? Every day you have muscle glycogen. Why are we being so restrictive that we have depleted glycogen stores, that we feel like garbage? Who wants to diet feeling like garbage? So yeah, obviously, people who over diet are going to enjoy a refeed. They finally get to feel normal. But if you're dieting properly in the first place, you always feel normal.
So I'd say it's more practical to do 2 consecutive refeed days at 400 grams rather than 1 day at 800 grams.
And I think it's more practical to have neither refeed day because you're only eating in a slight deficit and you feel good all the time. So yeah, if you're under eating, and it's easy for coaches to make that mistake, you don't know how many calories they actually need. It's guesswork. So if you notice they're feeling like shit, of course you give them a refeed. But then you say, we're going to up your calories now because I don't want you to need refeeds every weekend. Basically what you're doing is you're starving yourself Monday to Friday, not building any muscle, feeling like crap, and looking forward to the weekend where you get to finally eat. Why not eat at a slight deficit rather than a large deficit? You feel normal all week. Rather than living for the weekends, you can live every day. You feel normal, you feel happy every day because it doesn't feel like you're dieting.
Lucky for us, in March of 2020, a team of researchers led by Dr. Bill Campbell gave us exactly the study we've been looking for.
And we're supposed to use that data to decide which diet's better? I'm not dieting at a 25% deficit or a 35%. It's too much. That's a starvation diet. You shouldn't need to cut calories that low.
Most of the top coaches these days have moved away from the traditional 10 to 12 week contest prep diet, which really ends up being a crash diet in the end, and toward a much slower paced diet.
Well, I'm going to have to agree with Jeff on that. However, the problem is the diet shouldn't be 10 to 12 weeks of crash dieting in the first place. Why are we crash dieting? Why are we dieting for 10 to 12 weeks? Most people get too fat in the off season, and when they come time to diet, they have to crash diet. They're at 20+% body fat, bulking. They're bulking and cutting because Coach Greg's wrong. Why main gain? You got to bulk to put on muscle. Problem is when you bulk, you eventually have to cut. And see what happened? 10 to 12 weeks crash diet. When you're on a crash diet, you know what happens? You lose muscle. So rather than going to 20%, why not maintain something reasonable? 12, 15% off season. And then when you go on a diet, you don't need a great deficit. It's a small deficit. Like Coach Greg, 250 calorie deficit. You're losing weight slowly. Able to preserve more muscle on this diet. The slower you diet, the more muscle you keep, the easier the diet is, the less cravings you'll have, the better sleep you'll have, sex drive, everything is better. So what's not being presented in this evidence is the slow weight loss diet. That is the diet you need to follow in the real world.
The only downside of doing diet breaks was that the total length of the diet took about twice as long.
And I 100% agree on Jeff at this part where he says, the slower you lose weight, the better.
But even this can be seen as a good thing. We've already discussed research showing that slower rates of weight loss tend to preserve muscle better.
Greater adherence, greater muscle will be kept on a slow diet. So the key is lose the weight slower than last time.
And I personally think the reason that there was more sustainable fat loss with diet breaks is that those subjects were getting more of what you could call practice with being at maintenance.
So what does Coach Greg do with his diet plans? Well, typically I give plan A, B, and C. In plan A, the calories are just slightly below maintenance. Little bit, small deficit. You start that diet, doesn't feel like a diet. You don't even notice it. You're slowly losing the weight. Eventually, if that becomes your maintenance and you lost enough weight, you stick to that diet for the rest of your life. Doesn't feel like you're dieting. You lose some weight, feel good. However, sometimes your metabolism will slow down. You lost 50 pounds, you're a smaller person, you have a lower metabolic rate. You've lost weight, maybe you lost 20, 50 pounds, slower metabolism, lower NEAT. You then have plan B, a little bit less calories, couple hundred less. That is a small deficit once again. However, if you're trying to crash diet, you have to lose that weight by the summer, by the wedding, down south. You have a before and after transformation you're trying to win. You got to drop crazy amounts of calories. You're going to suffer. Doesn't feel good. Slower you lose weight, the better.
The story also doesn't end there, because as promising and as exciting as this study was, it was done on non-exercising obese men.
Just because one study says, hey, it worked, doesn't mean it actually works.
This time, the results weren't as impressive. To cut right to the point, after 12 weeks of dieting, the diet break group and the continuous group both lost the same amount of fat.
So what am I saying? Do the Coach Greg diet. Makes more sense. Just because they haven't studied it in a study doesn't mean it's not the best diet going. Trust me, I've studied this myself my entire life. I don't need some study telling me what I already know. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you're choosing to diet slower in a small deficit, and that if you're craving things too much and you need a cheat meal, that is great evidence that the diet is too hard for you, and that when it's over, probably going to regain the weight. Ending it here. GregDoucette.com for coaching. Greg Doucette IB Pro. Bloops are over there. Watch one of those. Subscribe to the newsletter. Buy my freaking cookbooks with low-calorie dense food. Keep you full. The diet that works forever. Hire the Coach Greg team for coaching plans. Buy the training books. Subscribe and press that freaking bell button right now. And until next time, I am out.